Good evening. God honors civic leaders like yourselves by providing you with the ability to discern truth, even in the face of confusion, deceit, or fraud. We pray, Father in heaven, thank you for the many prosperous years of good fruit that comes from this council's efforts. Please continue your protection through the gifts of discernment and wisdom here in this council and also in their personal and family lives. Amen. Usually I enjoy staying for the first part of the meeting, but I have to rush off.
Not
So
a
I
worry.
just wish you all Merry Christmas and Happy New Year.
Not a worry. Thank you.
Thank you.
With that, I'll call the meeting to order and ask that you please rise and join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Rose, could you call the roll, please?
Councilmember Boger. Councilmember Wagner.
Here.
Councilmember Greenlee.
Here.
Councilmember Lindsay.
Here.
Councilmember McDaniel. Councilmember Shoemaker.
Here.
Councilmember Corsi.
Here.
Thank you. Councilmember Boger just sent me a note that said that he is likely not going to make it back here in time, and we also received a message from Councilmember McDaniel to let us know that she would not be in attendance this evening either.
Mr. Mayor, I ask unanimous consent that we excuse council members Boger and McDaniel.
Hearing no objections, so ordered. Are there any amendments to the agenda this evening? Okay. Hearing none, the agenda will stand as put forward. First order of business we have this evening is a proclamation honoring the 75th commemoration of the attack on Pearl Harbor. December 7th, 1941. Whereas the city of Washougal has always taken great pride and respect for those who have served this great nation in its defense and in the cause of democracy. And whereas the veterans that reside within our community are a vital link in maintaining our standing as a leading city in the great state of Washington. And whereas the community of Washougal is remembering World War II veterans and the good people of the greatest generation who responded selflessly to the call at home and abroad to protect and serve our country. And whereas the city now joins with the community to proclaim and announce the honoring of the 75th commemoration of the attack on Pearl Harbor, December 7, 1941. Now, therefore, I, Sean Gard, Mayor of Washougal, do hereby proclaim December 7, 2016 as honoring of the 75th commemoration of the attack on Pearl Harbor, December 7, 1941, and recognizes and is honored to be set aside this day as a time of honoring all those who have served and encourages all citizens to join in this observance. Is Dale here this evening? Oh, he's going to try and be here. Okay. We do have, for those of you who may be available on Wednesday, we do have some commemoration activities that we're doing here on the 7th itself, starting at Rose 9 o'clock in the morning here in Chambers. Watching the commemoration service live from Hawaii, and then moving across for a little ceremony over in the community center as well. So if any of you are available, you're more than welcome to attend. With that, we are at the first opportunity in the agenda for any members of the public that would like to address council. We do have the 3 public hearings this evening on 3 of the development agreements, so if you can, any comments that have to do with those development agreements and the subdivisions would be best kept for that portion of the meeting. But if you can't stay or you've got time commitments, you're certainly willing or welcome to make them at this time as well. Okay. Moving to the consent agenda. Council, this evening, your consent agenda has 8 items on it. Your workshop minutes of November 21st, 2016. Your city council minutes of November 21, 2016. Your payroll claims totaling $574,558.50. Your accounts payable totaling $657,819.91. Agenda Bill 109-16, an authorization for the mayor to sign a professional services agreement with the West Columbia Gorge Humane Society. Agenda Bill 110-16, an authorization for the mayor to sign a supplemental professional services agreement number 1 with Skillings Connolly as an addendum for archaeological services. Agenda Bill 111-16, an authorization for the mayor to sign a supplemental professional services agreement number 3 with GSI Water Solutions. And Agenda Bill 112-16, an authorization for the mayor to sign a supplemental professional services agreement number 4 with GSI Water Solutions. Council?
Mr. Mayor, I ask unanimous consent that the consent agenda be approved as read.
See no objections, so ordered. Okay, that brings us to new business. Item A, a public hearing in regard to Granite 3 LLC development agreement. Good evening, Mitch.
Good evening. We have 3 development agreements in front of you this evening. I would like to talk a little bit about collectively, at least as how they, the particulars that pertain to all 3 of them initially, and then we can break them down into for each hearing. So we have the Granite 3 development agreement, which will go first, the Marlin development agreement, and then the North 20 development agreement. So it's important to know what the development agreements do. They lock in densities as outlined within the development agreement, the general layout associated with the development agreement. It does talk about the trails and the open space requirements of each. The collector, as it pertains to the North 20 development, as well as the Marlin development, and the modified development that we've been speaking of. The development regulations, it vests for development regulations, particularly stormwater. And most importantly, it allows development to proceed consistent with the development moratoriums that are in place. The Granite Highlands is in the Woodburn Hills sub-area, and which is under moratorium, as well as the Marlin development and the North 20 are in the UGA moratorium area. Those moratoriums require development agreements in order to proceed with development, which is the biggest issue in front of all of these. It's important to know what they do not do, and quite simply, it does not approve the land division. And that being said, each of the proposals will need to go through preliminary land division or subdivision approval after this. That requires a preliminary plat submittal, preliminary engineering plans, roads, we look at utilities, water, sewer, stormwater, drainage, erosion control, etc. Critical areas reports will address the applicability of slopes and wetlands and habitat on each of the development sites. There will be a SEPA, another SEPA. The SEPA that was processed for all of these tonight was a non-project action for the development agreement itself. There will be a separate SEPA project action for each of the developments as well. There will be a public hearing in front of the land use hearing examiner. And after that, the conditions of approval will be dictated by the examiner, and final plat approval will need to be applied for, which includes the submittal of a final plat, final engineering plan approval, and well as demonstration that they have complied with the conditions of approval. So now we'll move on to the hearing for each development agreement. These particular issues are the same for each of the development agreement. So for each development agreement, so I'm only going to say them once, but they are applicable to all of the development agreements. A joint notice of an application and likely SEPA determination was issued and published on November 18th, 2016, and that SEPA was deemed final today at City Council workshops were held on November 7th, 2016 for the Marlin development, then November 14th and November 21st for the Granite 3 and the North 20 development agreements, and then again earlier this evening for all three of them. Public hearing notice was published on November 23rd for the Marlin development and November 28th for the Granite 3 and North 20 development agreements. So moving to specifically Agenda Bill 113-16, Granite 3 development agreement. This is our development site, and I'm sorry I didn't get this changed again, but it also includes these portions of property on the west end. This property has been in the city since 1994. It was designated as R175 at that time, and then the Woodburn Hills sub-area was placed on it in 1997. It is approximately 60 acres total. The zoning on it is, as I mentioned, R175. The allowed density within the R175 is 5.8 units per acre, which would yield a maximum of 348 units. Their proposed density is 2.5 units per acre, or 152 units. There's trails and open space, 15-plus acres within the development. Specific design and aesthetic standards, construction styles, single-family detached, building facade diversity on the same street, critical areas retention, wetlands and buffers, and a trail system through that, and the compliance with the existing development regulations. What they are requesting, again, specifically is a moratorium exemption from that moratorium so they can proceed with the development of a subdivision. They would like to vest to the current development regulations and park impact fee credits to the extent that the trail system meets our park capital facility plan. They would like credits for that. And variance to street tree heights, again, as I mentioned at the work session, it's probably not going to be relevant after tonight with the adoption of the stormwater standards, but because we are reducing the height of street tree requirements, but they have requested a variance to the street tree heights. Again, there's a subject property within the Woodburn Hills sub-area, and this is the proposed development. I'm not going to go over all the comments received as they are in the record. I will note, however, that there were, since we talked about at the work session, there was another comment from Wanda and Jason Horwidge that is in the record, and as well as Mr. Lance Puffer regarding, sorry, Mr. Puffer is not regarding this development. And then the Granite Highlands, we also received from the Department of Historic Preservation about the requirement that they have met the requirement for an archaeological predetermination. So the recommended action is to hold a public hearing to take public testimony. If council desires, make a motion to have the city attorney read the ordinance by title only and pass, post, and publish the ordinance in the usual manner.
Thank you, Mitch. With that, I will open the public hearing and ask any member of the public that would like to speak to the Granite 3 development agreement to please come forward to the microphone, give us your name and address, and short testimony.
Steve Wilmot. I live at 1958 North 9th Street, directly below this development. We moved in to this development in 2005, and at that time, there was another development being created just to the west of our development. And there's a natural stream that comes down along what's now North 8th Street. That natural stream was cut off by the developer that was clearing the land. Down below, it continued. So I addressed, in 2005, I addressed this committee and asked them to reattach that, or have the developer to reattach the stream to the wetlands that are up on the hill. And they did that, and they did a beautiful job. It looked really nice, and the water was flowing. It looked great. Since that time, the owner of the home at 1897 North 8th Street has filled in and covered that attachment. So any water that's going to come off that hillside naturally, and there's tons of it that comes off there, is just spread out. It can't hit that stream naturally. It has to go underground and eventually come out down below. So I'm concerned, not necessarily with this development, I'm concerned with this development because there is so much wetlands up on that hillside. I'm concerned that there isn't a natural flow of water coming down the hillside. And I firmly believe that that needs to be addressed. So that's my first concern. Secondly, I'm concerned about the density. There was recently a development, Columbia Ridgeway, going up the hill, Woodburn Hill, that is being filled in now. And I'm not sure what the width requirements of the road are, but if you drive Columbia Ridgeway, you'll find that you can't drive more than 20 miles an hour safely. That is a very narrow street. There's too much parking on it. And in fact, there's not enough parking for the people who are there now, and there's still a great deal of infill left on that hill. And they're already parking up on T Street because they don't have room for their vehicles down below. When it's done, it's going to be a mess. T Street's going to be lined from Woodburn Hill Road as far as they can park west. So I'm concerned that this new development going in have adequate parking for the homes that are being built there. And the biggest concern is there's adequate efforts taken to take care of the water runoff, or there's going to be some serious slide issues on that hillside. I know some of the homes that are being built now, they're putting huge French drains in to try to drain the water off, and they've been successful so far, but I don't expect it to last. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. Mitch, are you familiar with the water runoff, that issue? You've not.
Not at the specific property, no.
Can we make sure that we've got that
Yep.
address down and have that checked on? Thank you. Anyone else that would like to speak to the Granite Highlands? Good evening.
Good evening. My name is Jason Horwich. Mitch got the letter from my wife this afternoon. Thank you for the opportunity. We live on 491 Stonegate. We read in the notice that they're planning to take care of critical slopes. On the lots adjacent to us, there's about 80 feet from front to back of 3 lots. 80 feet is very difficult to build on in elevation. When we moved in, we looked at the plan that was available at the time, and it showed those as not developed. I'm very concerned that somebody's going to try to build in a lot that's 80 feet from front to back, solid rock. Don't think it's possible. I think it would take dynamite. When we put our house in, we hit solid rock, and that's when we quit. The second current concern is behind us is the stormwater area. And I recognize that stormwater is necessary, but the way it's platted right now, there's about 40 feet from where the stormwater low end is shown to the high end. How are you going to put a pond, a stormwater pond, that's got 40 feet of elevation change in approximately 60 feet north to south? It's going to be a very, very steep area. I'm very concerned about the access to that. I also note that there's no easements to get the water to that stormwater. So you've got lots all along the top of the hill with no easements to get the water to it. When we built our house, in the adjacent area, we took a lot of effort to collect the water coming off the hill. And I'm very concerned if they put a stormwater in, that they're going to really mess that up. We know that there's an easement there, and I recognize the easement is for a good purpose to get the water off the hill. It's the details and the engineering and the size of that pond and how you're going to get stable banks on a very steep hillside.
Thank you. Good evening.
I'm Don Parker. I live at 440 Stonegate. Couple things. The thing that troubles me first is looking at the preliminary plat, or whatever you would call it, the diagram that was included. It seemed to me that the person who drew it had never even been there. I mean, we had lots where from you to me was the distance from the street to the cliff, where it's near vertical solid rock going up 20, 30 feet or more. Houses don't fit there, period. I mean, there's no amount of rock you can move reasonably. And there's like 3 or 4 lots like that. So why would you do that? Why would you not show an easement that's clearly there, that's granted to one of the communication companies, if you've done your homework? So, and then the detail of drawing these lots seems to me to ignore what is probably the most important challenge here, and that's the geology of this hillside. You've got faults running through it, which are shown on regional geologic maps clearly. You've got faults running through it, which are not shown. The whole hillside is a result of earthquake that probably took place about 300 years ago. Huge amounts of that hillside have come down. That's why we have all the flat areas and slump blocks, huge slump blocks that are on this hillside. And I guess if you study geologic history, you're going to see that perhaps we're ready for another one of those. Not today, not tomorrow, maybe 50 years, maybe it'll be 100 years. But how long is the city going to be here? So we've got to take this into account. It looks like we just took a hillside and we made a plan. We didn't go there, we didn't look at it, we didn't have geologists come in ahead of time, and yet we decided the density. And to me, we've got too much density on the hillside to begin with. We're proposing to have more density and load it up even more, and then we're going to sit there and wait for the earthquake. And I can tell you right now, you can say, well, earthquakes happen. So what? You know, it's natural. We can't prepare for everything. But in the state of Washington, cities or governments have been sued for ignoring those kind of threats and have lost. And so I don't want to be paying the taxes if we lose a $50 million lawsuit on that hillside. So we need to have geologists in there doing a detailed study ahead of time before we start laying out what we're going to do. Doesn't make sense to me. And you might ask my qualifications for that. I have a PhD in geology from Oregon State University. I've studied volcanology, structural geology. I do know what's going on the hillside. And I'm not saying we don't build, but I'm saying we look at that before we start laying all this out, and we determine the problems and try to do our best to avoid them. So,
Thank you,
Thank you.
Don. Good
Hi.
evening.
My name's Carol Parker. I live at 440 Stonegate. And you received my letter should be in your packet, okay? I wanted to explain a little bit more about my letter and perhaps ask some questions of you. Am I correct in understanding that the determination of non-significance has already been made by the council?
Not
Okay.
by the council, by the city.
By the city, okay. I'd like to express my opposition to that based on the 4 lots that are accessed only from Stonegate Drive. Those lots are a very strong wildlife habitat now. There are eagles, hawks, buntings, which I've noted is quite a rare bird that I've seen every year from my windows across the street. They're not common, and I feel that putting 4 homes in that area, which, first of all, doesn't even have it's access off of a private street that belongs to Granite Highlands. So it really doesn't even I don't believe have a legitimate access because it's accessed off of a street that another HOA, all the homeowners in the other HOA are paying for. You're looking puzzled, okay. If you
Mitch.
look at, okay, the lot numbers
Ca-
152,
Carol,
yeah,
Mitch, we don't have any private streets up there, do we?
yeah.
I didn't, no.
No, that's not true. You do have private streets there.
just look at the map.
Just look at the map and go up there and walk up there. You do have private streets up there. You have private streets. Part of Stonegate is a private street.
May I just say there's a sign in the photograph
Folks.
that I appended.
Folks, we're going to kind of go in order,
Well-
so.
Well, you're just wrong. There is a private street there, and you need to go up there, and if you want, I will take you by the hand and show you the street sign that she's referring to. It is a private street.
And if it is a private street, the developer will have to deal with that again at the time of subdivision. They'll have to address access for all the properties.
Okay,
That
well,
wasn't the
that-
subject of the development agreement that was
Oh.
in front of council.
Okay.
Okay, but moving along, okay, my issue is that building homes on those lots which are probably unbuildable anyway, will destroy the wildlife habitat there. And this is an area that's used heavily by walkers and runners, and it's used by the whole community. The whole community walks down Stonegate and enjoys the birds and the trees there. So I think to put homes there and to destroy that part of Washougal would just be absolutely wrong. And so I am completely against the determination of non-significance. I think that's just absolutely wrong. My other points are regarding the development agreement, and I would like to see some changes.
I do need you to wrap up.
All right, I'd like to see some changes made in the development agreement. First of all, in point 4E, you state that steep slopes and critical area of retention are going to be made into open space. Well, I don't think there's a steeper slope in this whole development of Granite 3 than there is in lots 150, 152, 105, 106, and 104, the ones that will be accessed off of Stonegate. Those are almost nearly vertical. So I don't understand why those are not put into open space. So I have other reasons, and you can read it in my letter. I feel that the development agreement should be changed to reflect those lots being open space.
Thank you.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen.
Good evening.
My name is Roger Hauge. I live at 470 North Stonegate. I've been in this community for a year, and I love it. And I love it very much. It's cool. I retired out of Eastern Washington University, where I taught science education. I take a look at that 60 acres, and I want to question your use of it, because right now it is Corcus Garryana ecology. The Gary Oaks that are there are very limited in this whole region, and taking and wiping out, as this development will do, that ecology with all of its associated water, with all of the associated wildlife, I think is irresponsible. I hate to use that word, but it is. I know that development occurs. I know that bulldozers go in and knock it down. When I read the SEPA checklist today, and I looked at, we're going to protect the habitat buffers, we're going to protect the seasonal wetlands, and I looked at the map and realized that all of those wetlands, all of those water courses, all of those supposed buffer areas were all going to be under houses and the 35% paved surface. So think very carefully, as you are stewards of our community, think very carefully about authorizing the destruction of that 60 acres of very critical habitat. Thank you.
Thank you, Roger. Anyone else that would like to speak to the Granite Highlands Development Agreement? Last call. Good evening.
Hi, Nick Brown, 470 North Y Street. Mitch, I had a question on that map that you showed earlier. You had the outline on the map, and then you took your laser pen and pointed out some other portion of that. You might want to pull
The
it
other
up,
four
that's
lots?
fine. Is that what the other 4 lots was? Yeah, that right there. So my question on the top end of that, I know on the top portion of that extra piece, that's just a giant, kind of a cliff, really. Is the plan to build houses up there?
I think they've identified them as lots.
Yeah?
These specific lots right here?
Yeah.
Yeah, that is the proposal, to have lot and a lot and a lot.
Okay, and then they'd punch a hole, or the street through?
The street would connect, correct.
Okay. Okay, yeah, that was actually my only question. I just wanted confirmation on that. Thanks.
Bet. Last call for anyone else that would like to speak to the development agreement. Larry, good evening.
Yeah, Larry Landgraver, 29513 Southeast 33rd Street, Washougal. Quick question, he just brought up, the gentleman before me. That is pretty much a cliff, where those lots are. If I read this correctly, because our property line may be that
northern
vertical
side.
line that you see right above that. I'm not sure if it is, but that does basically just drop right off in front of our house and go down that way, so. Make a comment on that. The other thing I did want to mention too is that the gentleman that was talking about the geology and the faults in that area, it's something I hadn't thought about for a while, but when they were building Granite Highlands, they were doing some blasting down there. And we did have some issues where it literally, you would hear a blast go off and you would hear it again up on the other side of the hill. It would go right up behind us. So there are some structures are in there, the way the geology is. I don't know a lot about that, but that's just the way it's set up. So I thought I'd point that out. I think he knows what he's talking about.
Well, no doubt about it, that entire area is an old quarry.
Yeah, it
And we do have the blasting ordinances coming back the first part of January.
I don't have a specific date. I'd have to check with Ron.
Yeah, it's because a lot of us have wells too, so we're always wondering what that might do to the well and so on. So it's something to think about. But anyway, I'll have to talk to the developer. I don't know if that property, maybe there's something on there that's a little bit off on the way the property line lays, but it'd be a tough place to put a home. So, thank you.
You bet. Good evening.
Hi, Amy Brown. I live at 470 North Y Street. I'm concerned about those lots on the north side of Y also. It's a sheer drop off and it's right on the other side of my house. So I guess I just want to voice my opinion that I would hope that those, I don't know if it's 3 or 4 lots there, be omitted from this proposal. And if not, for me as a homeowner, how do I know that once building on those occurs or blasting or whatever happens, that my house is going to be safe on the downside of that? So, yeah, just wanted to voice my opinion about those lots in particular on that cliff, because across the street from me, it's a sheer face.
Right.
There's no question about it, so thank you.
You bet. Thank you for wearing your Husky shirt too. Good evening.
Good evening. Terry Waters, 2290 North 6th Street. And my questions are short. Mitch, did you get our letter? Waters? And while he's looking for that, I just want to validate that he got our letter. The council has read our concerns, our issues. And I don't know the next step for you, but if you talk those over amongst each other, but we are adamantly against the development. And I'll wait for Mitch's.
Yes, we did, and we discussed it at workshop.
Thank you.
Thank you, Terry. Last call for anyone else that would like to speak to this development agreement. Okay, see none, I will close the public hearing. Council?
Mr. Mayor, I ask unanimous consent that we authorize the city attorney to read the ordinance by title only.
Hearing no objection, so ordered.
An ordinance authorizing the approval of a development agreement between the City of Washougal and Granite 3 LLC, providing for the vesting of regulations and the ability to proceed with land use entitlements, including but not limited to a subdivision in compliance with the moratorium provisions of ordinance number 1805, applicable to the Woodburn Hill sub-area.
Mr. Mayor, I move we pass, post, and publish the ordinance in the usual manner.
Second?
I've got a motion and a second that we pass and post the ordinance in the usual manner. Council discussion. Paul?
Couple of things. I would say that there's been a whole process which you haven't seen, because we agree that the streets, some of the streets in the Granite Highland development are too narrow and that there's inadequate parking. It is, we have basically required, well, let me step back. There was in place what was called the Granite Highlands or Woodburn Hill.
The sub-area?
Woodburn Hill sub-area?
Woodburn Hill sub-area, which allowed narrower streets and less parking than the rest of the city. That's no longer true. We have the same regulations up there that we have for the rest of the city. So the same street widths and the same parking requirements, which are substantially more than what was built up there that everybody hates. The stormwater and the slopes things, this development agreement does not actually authorize those lot lines. What it authorizes is a density. And each one of those lots, before you could build on it or even subdivide it properly, you would have to go through a technical process in which professional engineers looked at the stormwater issues, the earthquake issues, the slope issues. Help me out here, Mitch, what else?
Habitat, erosion control, critical areas, all of them.
So all of those concerns will be addressed at some point in the future. This does not actually create that subdivision. It really only creates the kind of big, broad lines. So that's true of the geological study, the wildlife habitat, and so forth. I guess that's all, but I just do want to be clear that to some degree, the council is in a bind here. We have an obligation to you all, and we have an obligation to the property owner who owns that piece of ground. And somehow we have to find a compromise, which probably no one is going to like. In fact, there's an old saw that says, if everyone dislikes your compromise, you probably have got it right. So, I don't know what to say other than that. Thank you, Mayor.
You bet. Dan?
Two things. We're just doing the density thing here tonight, but that will affect all these issues that these people are talking about later on as the development later happens, right? So I hear Dr. Parker and what he says about the slope side issues and the geological issue there. I suppose as it proceeds forward and lots are built out or it's laid out, there will be an engineering analysis made that would concern his concerns there. So what happens if we approve the density and there is some discovery in the process that makes some of that unbuildable, and then does that just compress the density even more on what's out there?
No, I would imagine, Mitch, that would just make certain lots, assuming that it's gone through final plat, unbuildable.
Yeah, they could lose lots, but they're not going to gain lots in that area.
Yeah. And keep in mind, council, what you're doing here is more than the density. This is a development agreement, so you've
Right.
got certain other things that are in there as well that we're
Right.
either agreeing to or modifying with the developer as we go, so. Dave?
3 questions for Mitch. When are you going to address the downhill drainage issues? At what part of the future process?
Subdivision?
Okay. Is a geological study part of the remaining process?
Yes, it is.
And is the assurance you gave me at workshop today that these issues will be addressed in the coming year still valid?
Related to?
On the trails?
On the trails?
The whole process, that all these things will be looked at, especially the trails?
Well, trails is a separate project that we'll look at as part of the Parks Capital Facility Plan, same with Transportation Capital Facility Plan and utility plans. But
I'll take that as a yes.
okay, I want to make sure that.
In which
answering
case,
your questions.
in which case you'll have my support for this tonight, contingent upon solving these problems in the coming year. And ladies and gentlemen, the reason I want to solve these in the coming year is I want to be a part of this solution, and I'm not going to run for office. So my term expires on the 31st of December, and I want this done before I leave office.
31st of December this coming year.
Yes. Not this year.
Next year.
Pretty quick resolution, wouldn't it?
Other council discussion. Joyce?
I just want to make sure, the Granite 3 development agreement is what we are voting on this evening, these 4
Correct.
points.
The entire development agreement that's
Yeah.
in your packet, correct. And if I may, Your Honor, I'd also like to note that this portion of Stonegate is private. This portion is public.
Gotcha.
No, that's not right.
It's dedicated with the plat.
No, that's not correct. Then your signs are all wrong then.
The signs may be wrong, I'm just looking at the
We've
dedicated
got
plat.
we've got a portion of a private road up there.
Yes.
Okay. Michelle?
Yeah, I just wanted to point out that one of the reasons the council put a moratorium on this area, because I was on the Planning and Development Committee with Paul and Brent, was due to the fact that we had gotten a lot of complaints about density and just sheer numbers of cars on the hill. And that although it's R175 and a lot of these lots are fairly large and complying with that, that our intent had been to look at even larger sized lots because of the problems that had been encountered on the hillside. And why the developer has really listened to the council with a lot of our requests for trails and lowering density. And like Paul said, with the roads now being in accordance with city code versus the Woodburn sub-area code. Although the Woodburn sub-area, we still haven't officially wiped that. It's just a moratorium.
Correct.
Which is why we put the moratorium in place, because the Woodburn sub-area does still actually exist. But that's why we put the moratorium in place, because we were concerned about density issues on the hill. And I do, like I say, like what this developer does, but because of that and all the problems that we have encountered, I'd really like to stay true to what our initial thoughts were on why we put that moratorium in place in the first place, was to create larger lot size to hopefully lessen the density up there. So I don't think I'm gonna be able to support it.
Okay.
If I could note, when I went back to this, that, I mean, their proposed density for the development is at 2.5 units per acre. The R115 zoning density is a 2.9 units per acre. So they're actually less than what the R115 zoning density requirement would be in terms of total density of what you're looking at.
But we also mentioned that there's lots that are 6,000, 8,000 square foot individually, and I'm unable to read each individual lot size on there.
Right, and I think what you're,
So, yeah.
okay.
Other council questions? Okay, I've got a motion and a second to pass, post, and publish the ordinance in the usual manner. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Anybody care for a roll call vote?
Please.
I heard 3-2, but Gross?
Do we need 4 for an ordinance?
Yes, you need 4 votes.
Councilmember Wagner,
No.
Councilmember Greenlee,
Yes.
Councilmember Lindsay,
Yes.
Councilmember Shoemaker,
Yes.
Councilmember Corsi.
No, because of the density issue.
Okay. Motion fails. I don't know at this point that we have anything else that we can do with this one this evening unless council wants to reconsider anything at this point, any of those members who voted in the no side.
But the majority is the yes side.
Yeah, in this case, I'm not sure that we've got a majority, but yeah.
I might be convinced if somebody can really convince me that that last comment that you were making, Mitch, about the density, whatever, about the actual density being the way it was apportioned.
Yeah, I think what Counselor Wagner's issue is not density, is lot size. Density is it's a mathematic calculation, and I did that mathematical calculation, and you look at it, and they are at 2.9 units. They're at 2.5 units per acre. The R115 is 2.9 units per acre, so they're actually less than what the R115 is. However, because they have 15 plus, and I just added that up, acres of open space and parks and trails that they're protecting, they've transferred the density from those areas and made lots smaller. So they've
Some lots smaller.
some lots smaller, some lots are larger, but, so it's the same amount of lots on the site that would be allowed under an R115 development, but the lots are smaller because they have limitations on the property, given wetlands and the buffers and the trails that they're putting in.
Okay, so it's a trade-off between all the buffers, everything else that goes in there.
That is exactly what that is.
Okay, I will change my vote, yes.
I move for reconsideration.
Second?
Okay, I've got let me get back here, hang on just a second. Okay, I've got a motion and a second for reconsideration of Agenda Bill 11316. Council discussion. Any discussion? Dave?
It was interesting to see this play out tonight and watch the council develop their opinions based on what they heard and the questions that they asked the staff. Even after the vote was taken, they were open to changing a vote if their concerns could be satisfied. This is truly democracy.
Any other council questions or comments? Okay, I've got a motion and a second for reconsideration. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Motion carries for reconsideration. Do we need to, again, do an actual vote for, or was the reconsideration the new vote for acceptance of the development agreement approval of the development agreement?
I would take the council's vote as an affirmative vote for the ordinance in view of the fact that it was a motion to reconsider the first vote for the ordinance. And we had an indication from the no vote that he was now voting affirmatively for the ordinance, correct? Then I think that it's reasonable to construe that's what the council's vote was for.
So we're good to go.
If any council members, though, have another understanding, then by all means, it's reasonable to call for another vote on the ordinance itself.
Okay, Paul?
Procedurally, it's my understanding that a vote for reconsideration is a motion in and of itself, not the actual underlying motion. So I would suggest that in an abundance of caution, we need to vote on the ordinance again.
So move.
And I'll defer to Councilmember Greenlee's parliamentarian analysis.
Okay, I've got a motion by Dave. Is there a second?
Second.
Got a motion and a second to pass, post, and publish the ordinance in the usual manner. Any council discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Motion carries. Takes care of Granite Highlands. Mitch, moving to Marlin Development.
Thank you, Your Honor. Agenda Bill 114-16. Again, this development is along Crown Road, north of McKeever, and south of 30th. Consists of 14.2 acres. It is zoned R1-10 currently, and under our proposed Northwest UGA rezone efforts, it will remain R110. Allowed density for the development is 4.3 units per acre in the R110. That would work out to be 61 units per acre. The proposed density, what they are proposing is 2.7 units per acre, or 38 units total. They have about 3 acres of open space, slopes, and wetlands. And their specific design and aesthetic standards include construction style, detached, single family. They are voluntarily looking at LID stormwater and stormwater aesthetics, although they will vest to the current stormwater regulations. Critical areas retention. And there is language regarding the collector that we're discussing in compliance with that, and consistent fencing along said collector. And of course, it's in compliance with the UGA land use study. What they are requesting specifically is the moratorium exemption. So they would like an exemption from the moratorium and to be able to proceed with development. They would vest to the current development regulations. They're also requesting a road modification for their loop road in the internal. It wouldn't have sidewalks, and that would be gated. That's also part of the development agreement request. And TIF fees, credit fees for the portion of the road within the collector. And so this is their proposed development, the 38 acres, 38 lots, 14.2 acres. Again, I noted the comments, they're in the record, and I discussed at the work session. So the recommended action is to hold a public hearing, to take public testimony. Council desires make a motion to have the city attorney read the ordinance by title only and pass, post, and publish the ordinance in the usual manner.
Thank you, Mitch. With that, I will open the public hearing and ask any members of the public that would like to speak to the Marlin Development Agreement, please step forward to the microphone.
Yes, Mr. Mayor.
Good evening,
Council. For the record, Jamie Housley with the law firm of Jordan Remus, 1499 Southeast Tech Center Place, Suite 380, Vancouver, Washington, 98683. First of all, I would like to thank staff for their presentation and their hard work in getting this development agreement ready for the hearing this evening. With me tonight is my client, Marlin Development, in the back, Brett Simpson. Our client has been patiently working towards trying to get a development application submitted to the city so we can build this subdivision. And to that extent, they've completed a significant amount of work to prepare the application and proposal you see before you, including that the proposal fully meets the UGA land study that has been conducted by the city of Washougal. It meets the transitional density targets, as Mitch explained. We're only seeking about 2.7 units to the acre, which is far below what could be built there with only 38 units compared to the 61 potential. Some additional features include the implementation of low-impact development techniques where feasible. We're promoting different facades for the houses, both front, back, and along the alley. And we have, based upon the workshop comments from City Council, have placed additional enhanced fencing along the collector to make sure that that is protected for future generations. With that, we would request that City Council approve the ordinance tonight. And with that, I'll be willing to entertain any questions you have specifically in regards to the DA.
Perfect. Jamie, I'll probably go through the rest of public testimony before we come back to questions and answers.
Okay, thank you.
You bet. Stay close, though. Yep. Are there any other members of the public that would like to speak to the Marlin development? Good evening, Ken.
Ken Navidi, I'm at 2413 Southeast 283rd Street. I reside just off of Crown Road, about quarter of a mile maybe up the road on the right-hand side. As far as development in this area, I'm really concerned about Crown Road. I'm going to be handing Mitch a letter. I've already talked with Camus. I'm trying to organize people. We're going to call ourselves Friends of Crown Road. And the reason we're doing this is because this roadway is not only owned by the city of Camas, I think Washougal owns a bit of it, and the county as well. There's 3 entities involved, and it kind of, when you own just a part of a property, it doesn't seem like it gets as much eyes on it or investment as if you own the property full right out. So I'm really concerned that there's not a lot of communication between the counties and the 2 cities on this development. Big concerns that I have on Crown Road is not only does it affect Crown Road, but I spoke with the city of Camas as well. They have real concerns about transportation through the downtown core, because every car that comes down Crown Road is going to make a right and go down 3rd Street and shoot right through the center of Camas, where we've got a lot of traffic already. So what I'm wondering is, how can there be a determination of non-significance for 3 large projects where you've got 1,000+ homes, about 3,000 drivers, and there's determination of no significance on transportation corridors and how they're going to get out to Highway 14. I would motion that there be some sort of a combined environmental impact statement with the city of Camas that focuses on transportation before you put this amount of density in our neighborhoods. I was a part of the TAC committee. I was pretty vocal about trying to do large lots. I do understand that the state has a requirement for cities as far as density, but you know what? We are Washougal, and we are not the state of Washington. I mean, they can make determinations on what they want to see as far as cities, but we live here, and we don't want to see small homes, small tracts. I have people I know that live up the road in the development where the school's at, Woodburn Elementary and Camas, and they're living there now, and they're like, look, there are problems. People are living on top of each other. The houses all look the same. They're like, we had to find a house, so we found it here. But I feel that what people are looking for are large lots and a good home, and that's what I think sells. So I'm real concerned about small house, small development, and how that impacts us. So I would definitely look at the transportation. Not only that, but there's a lot of access issues for people crossing the road. I've had discussions with the school district over in Camas. They are really concerned with Crown Road. Busing up there is tremendously horrible as far as trying to pull off the side of the road on Crown Road to pick up kids. You can't do it in a bus because there's a car right behind you. This is where the high schoolers all go. Every morning I wake up and I look up 283rd towards the high school, and all I see is a line of cars. It's a real concern. And not only that, I really truly believe that, unfortunately, it's going to take some sort of a fatality and where somebody dies and a lawsuit to actually get this rolling. But somebody really, really needs to consider what, with the roadways we need, where we have to have pedestrians, we have to have people to be able to access a beautiful, gorgeous Lacamas trail system that we have. And there's really hardly any way of accessing it from the Washougal side. We have there's not even a crosswalk. So I just please hope that you look at this and take serious concerns about the impact in primarily the transportation. Thank you.
Thanks, Ken. Good evening, John.
John Hudson, 2911 Southeast 282nd Court. I live immediately north of this proposed project, and I agree with Mr. DeViti about the Crown Road issue. When I put in my little subdivision, I personally witnessed a very serious accident right at 30th Circle in Crown Road. A fellow on a motorcycle got hit by a car. It wasn't pretty. I've also seen other accidents there. It's a real issue, that Crown Road traffic. I have a couple of other points. We have a moratorium, and the purpose of a moratorium is to cross the T's, dot the I's, and I think that we should go through that whole process before any release of activity on these projects. Another thing that is kind of a personal issue, like I said, I live immediately adjacent to this property, and up in the northeast corner where it has wetland, open space, steep slope, there's a natural spring comes down from that hill. And in the spring, summer, and fall, it's just wonderful to hear the doves that are in that area. With a development like this, they won't be there. Also, the living where I do, I look out across that field, and this time of year, it's solid water over there. It's really, really wet. And I don't see that the stormwater open spaces here that they have would solve those problems. There's still going to be water under those houses. The water, it's unbelievable how much water comes off of that hill there. I think that that's the only points that I wanted to make. So thank you for that.
Thank you, John. Yes, good evening.
I'm Diane Richardson. I'm at 28112 Southeast 30th Circle, just right across from John, immediately north of this subdivision. I too agree. I have great concerns about Crown Road. Our home looks right down on Crown Road, and it's a solid line of cars as it is now. When the subdivision went at Woodburn Hill, I was mortified. I realized development has to happen, but my husband and I walk through that park every day, and the park has been so impacted. We don't even now, we go down to the south of the park. I don't even want to go to the north end because it's so, those houses are right on top of each other. They all look the same. They're like cookie cutter houses. It's just really a blight on Crown Road. What that's brought though is that on school mornings and school afternoons, the cars are lined up and they go fast on Crown Road. We have 6 children. My youngest, getting the bus, and Camas School District only sends the bus down And so when you're going children are being dropped off, they have to cross over Crown Road to come up Southeast 30th Circle. Camas won't do it the other way. And so it's dangerous. And I witnessed once my little boy going across the road. The bus driver had beckoned him to come, and 2 cars went around the bus driver and nearly hit my son. And so I totally am so concerned about the fact that there's just too much traffic in an area that's not equipped for that kind of traffic. It needs to be thought out. It needs to be really seriously thought out. Transportation studies need to be done. This was, when we bought this property 16 years ago, it was 5, 10, and 20 acre zoning. It's a rural feeling, and we're now crowding in the city into this rural area that's not equipped for it. There just aren't the facility or the foundation for the city out there yet. And so I would really ask you to consider that. It's a beautiful place, and I also agree with John. We walk out into that field where this is going to happen, and the water, it's like there's a natural spring that just flows down through the middle of that property. And I wondered when they were putting houses there, how in the world they were going to deal with that, because it is wet, it is a bog out there, and the water bubbles. It's just moving down through there. You can't walk out there with your feet getting completely muddy and wet. It's very, very wet. So I would ask you to really consider that. A lot more thought gone into this so that this area is safe. And I thank you.
Thank you, Diane. Good evening.
I'm Kevin Richardson, Diane's husband, 28112 Southeast 30th Circle. And what I'd like to talk about is actually do we have a picture of this lot itself? Look at that. So we live right at the north there, yeah, right there. And we have a tree line that comes right along the roadway up above the barrow pit that we've maintained for that 15, 16 years. And this proposal will cut out all of those beautiful trees. And I'm wondering if there's any possibility that the stormwater open space tract down below could be moved up and the whole thing moved down so that that doesn't get affected, because there's not really anything down on that other end that would be affected like this would. Anyway, I'd like that to at least be considered. And then I second the concern on that road. There are no sidewalks on that road and very narrow margins to walk on, and it's very hard to go up and down that road, and there are a lot of people that move up and down that road every day. So that needs to be considered. And that's what I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Kevin. Anyone else that would like to speak to the development agreement?
My name is Brett Simpson. I represent the developer of the property. I completely agree with the other people's concern about Crown Road and it being a concern for safety. It definitely is a problem, and I know it's not going to be an easy one with all 3 of the municipalities kind of having a hand in it. As far as our development's impact, we have done transportation studies, and that's included in our preliminary, and they address that. What's good about our development is it does create as you can see, the loop around there. My guess is Camas will probably run the bus through the loop rather than pulling off on Crown. I don't know why they wouldn't run it through the loop. So they should be able to move stops up there, which would help everyone up that Southeast 30th Road. They'll be able to move the stop off of Crown. And it also widens the right-of-way and adds sidewalks and park strip along the right-of-way there. So if anything, it should improve the sight line in that area. Not that it helps the rest of Crown, especially south of there where it gets really windy. As far as the stormwater, the reason we have addressed the stormwater, that's also in the preliminary as well. It's been accounted for. We actually had to lose a couple lots to increase the stormwater tract because the infiltration up there isn't as good as we'd like it to be. The wetland open space tract in the north is actually a Category 4. It's not a natural wetland. It takes stormwater from a culvert underneath Southeast 30th. So that's a majority of the water comes in there, sits in that area there, which was a man-made fish pond, according to the previous owners who had it for 100 some odd years. And then just the overflow of that fish pond ran down kind of diagonal across the property. So it was a man-made feature, but it fits the Category 4 wetlands, which isn't actually wetlands, but they consider it one. So that's why it's buffered off and set there. There was one more issue that somebody else brought up that I wanted to speak to, and I can't think of what it is. Oh, as far as the location of the stormwater tract, normally I'd acquiesce, but I can't make water run uphill, so.
I was gonna say, it's
That's
a little
the
bit of
downhill
gravity
part.
problem
I
there.
don't really have a choice in the location of the storm tract, so, yeah.
Any way to save the trees otherwise?
That's not up to me, because that's the transportation plan for the city. Actually, the way the road is right now, it's hard to really see, but it comes in at a very odd angle. Whoever developed it originally actually, when they punched in the road, didn't follow the easement correctly. And it's partially out of the easement, and then it comes back up. It's just really weird. So realigning the road should, again, help with the way that people are turning in and out of that area, and hopefully will make it a little bit better for people getting on and off of that Southeast 30th Circle Road.
Okay. Thank you, Brett. Anyone else that would like to speak to the agreement?
Do I have anything more?
Quickly.
Okay, thanks. Just one more, as far as the busing, there's several houses that live up further. I mean, I know going through the community, it'd be safe to stop the bus, but we're still talking about Crown Road, all the other houses that come out onto that Crown Road. And then also, one other concern I have is, I mean, that is a very steep hill there on Southeast 30. I think if you look at Crown Road, that's gonna be the only approach that I could see at that type of grade that comes down onto Crown. If, down further, at the development down to the south, it levels out and then it kind of goes out towards Crown Road. If you're right there on Southeast 30th Circle, that's a slope straight down. So if it's iced up, and which it was, this morning, potentially a car could just slide down that hill and down into Crown Road. So that's one of the concerns. And then also, real quickly, is that our sewage pump station supposed to be part of the development here? And my concern is really the need for a sewage pump station when you have a gravity sewer line up Southeast Crown Road. I know we do not own that sewer line, but I would like to still push for an interlocal agreement between the city of Candace and Washougal for using sewer, so that the ratepayers don't have to pay for a sewage pump station that would not necessarily be needed. Thank you.
Thanks, Ken.
Kevin mentioned about the trees. On the very southeast corner of my lot, there's at least 100-year-old sugar maple tree.
I'm sorry, what kind?
Pardon me?
What kind of tree?
Sugar maple. It's brilliant red in the fall, and it's huge. I've had quite a few people, strangers, come and take pictures under that tree. Graduations, weddings, because it's really gorgeous. It's 5 feet onto the right, south of my property. And I would hope that there was some way to maintain that gorgeous natural tree.
I'd like to address the trees as well. I let my husband do it, but I am passionate about trees. When we bought our property, when we got our plat map, it showed that, and the description of our plat is that our property goes from the road down to about 15 feet past the well house, down to the retention pond, and then to the middle of 283rd Circle. And so in that good faith, we planted beautiful sugar maples. These aren't just trees. They're 13, 14 years old. They're mature. They're beautiful. They're about 25 or 30 feet high. There's about a whole row of them that go up that street. And I absolutely will, we've maintained it. We put a sprinkling system in it. We've got beautiful plants. I'm a gardener. and a landscaper, and it is landscaped to the hilt with probably, in that whole, the whole way up that road, there are probably upwards of 200 plantings. This isn't just a row of trees. This is everything from evergreen plants to rhododendrons to beauty berries, euonymuses, red twig dogwoods. This is a beautiful landscaped thing with Japanese maples, sugar maples, red maples. I do not want that to be gone, and if needs be, we will get an attorney to go for adverse possession, because we have maintained it, we have mowed it, we have fertilized it, we have done everything to make this a thing of beauty. And there's ample room to straighten out that road without taking this beautiful place out that we have made, that we've maintained it as our own for 16 years. We thought it was our own until I saw the plat map go up in the meadow next to us. And that's what our title, when we bought our property, said, that it went from the road to the other side of the well shed. And so that's why we went and put thousands of dollars into that site. And if you go by it, we've had people ask to take their family pictures in our yard. And any of our neighbors can attest to it. It is beautiful, flaming red and orange and gold in the fall.
I think we all get,
You got it.
I think
Okay,
we all
I'm
get the idea.
passionate about it. I do not want that to go. And there's a way to put this subdivision in without taking out a huge part of our yard that we have done. So I appreciate it.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am, come on up. Good evening.
Hi, Jennifer Rose. I live at 2903 Southeast 282nd Court, Camas. So I'm just north of John on 282nd. And I just wanted to, second, third, fourth, all of what they've said. And also, we are in Camas, so our school bus will still stop on, there's no loop for it to turn around. From what I understand, this new development will be in the Washougal School District.
No, this isn't, this is in Camas.
Okay, Camas as
Yeah.
well? Okay. But then they said that there was gonna be a gate, so I'm not sure how a school bus would do a loop, but
In the inner circle, there's a gate.
the inner circle. Okay.
The road around it is open.
Okay. Gotcha, okay, so. Okay, well, I'm not sure we're about to do a turnaround, but I just wanted to say, please, if there's anything we can do to keep the lots larger, to not have it look like cookie cutter houses, we would really, really greatly appreciate it. It's a beautiful story-like scene right now. Used to be cows there, there's an old barn, and we just want to keep the natural beauty as much as we can. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else that would like to speak? Last call. Okay, with that, I will close the public hearing. Council?
Mr. Mayor, I ask unanimous consent that we authorize the city attorney to read the ordinance by title only.
Hearing no objection, so ordered.
An ordinance authorizing the approval of a development agreement between the City of Washougal and Marlin Development LLC, providing for the vesting of regulations and the ability to proceed with land use entitlements, including but not limited to a subdivision, in compliance with the moratorium provisions of ordinance number 1801, applicable to the Northwest UGA annexation area.
Mr. Mayor, I move we pass, post, and publish the ordinance in the usual manner.
Second. Okay, I've got a motion and a second to pass, post, and publish the ordinance in the usual manner. Council discussion. Paul?
Couple of questions. This is presently in the city, correct?
Correct.
Do we have any police enforcement authority on Crown Road?
For the portions that are in the city, yeah.
So is any of this in the city? I mean, Crown Road.
Yeah, the whole eastern, well, it's Crown Road, the portion? No, it's not in the city, in fact.
The Crown Road is in fact not in the city,
Correct.
so we can't enforce speed limits there.
Oh, we can. Our guys would.
Yeah.
Oh, we can? Okay. And my understanding is that this development is actually going to put sidewalks along Crown Road for their portion. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Do we have any way to put to, I don't know if Rob's still here, but do the state engineering standards allow us to put a crosswalk across Crown Road in the absence of a traffic light?
We'd want to look at the traffic volumes, and much like we did on E Street.
Right.
You'd probably want to mitigate that with some sort of crosswalk signal, something where you stop traffic actually to let pedestrians cross. You just put a crosswalk out there.
But if we could get the county to agree to it, that would be doable?
We'd have to work with the county, yes.
Yeah, it's a county road, it's not ours.
I'd also just note that, I mean, in terms of crossing to get to the other side, this isn't the portion where we would cross. I mean, the trailhead is further to the north, but.
Oh, okay.
I mean, it's still a item for discussion, but not necessarily relevant for this.
Thank you.
Not at all relevant for the development agreement, but for the project itself.
That's all I can think of right now, thanks.
David?
Are there any of the concerns we've heard tonight that won't be addressed in the subsequent planning process?
Well, I mean, there's
Planning
a few concerns in there. I mean, I think the trees, one, that'll have to be addressed if there's gonna be an adverse possession claim. That's something that has to be ironed out prior to final plat, not preliminary. The issues with, stormwater obviously will be addressed.
The springs?
Springs, again, that's storm, it'll have to be addressed. Wetlands, although it is Category 4, it still doesn't have buffers or anything like that, but it's still, regulated. But I was trying to think of any of the other concerns noted. I mean, obviously, all the issues with Crown are not, not the responsibility of a development like this to mitigate completely for. They are doing their proportionate share along Crown Road to mitigate their proportionate share of that. What was the other issue? Yeah, I think that's transportation. Again, they all have a transportation study. I believe, Brent, if I'm not mistaken, they've already done one, but I haven't looked at it because I haven't had the development in front of me yet. But they have done that work as well.
So I'll take that as a yes. These issues will be addressed in the subsequent planning process during the coming year. Thank you.
Planning and approvals. Paul?
I thought of one more thing. There's a question about infrastructure. Certainly Crown Road is part of that, but water, sewer, actually power and telephone and all of those things. At what point are those plans created, and is there water and sewer adequate at this point for this development?
Yeah, they actually have an easement through the south property for, Brent, I'm not sure, is it both for storm or for sewer and water?
Yes.
Yeah, yeah, so they have easements through neighboring properties already to bring the utilities there.
Okay, so basically, just to explain, normally you don't build all of the infrastructure and then draw the lot lines and start developing the property. That's done concurrently. You look at the development and then in parallel with that, you figure out where the roads are going to go, where the sewer lines are going to go, water, electricity, gas, telephone, all of that. So it's a bit premature to say, well, we have to have all of the infrastructure in place. That, in fact, the reality is that much of that infrastructure is actually built by the developer.
And to answer the specific question that Mr. Navidi had about a pump station, because of the easement, they have gravity that will take care of it. They don't need a sewer pump station for that.
Oh, thank you.
Michelle?
Yes, Mitch, could you tell me again what the original number of houses was that was in this development? Do you recall that number? Was it 80 or?
No, it was
No, I mean, from a density standpoint, they're allowed 61, but they actually had an earlier preliminary approval, and it was about 40-some, 45.
Oh,
Now they're
okay.
down to 38.
Okay. Yeah, I just wanted to point out that the developer has been really good about working with the council and decreasing the number of lots that are there. This is, if we were to go by the Berger-Abram study, which is R110, they've used the PUD for the open space, right, to get the lots down a little bit lower than 8,000. But when we were originally presented this, the lots were a lot smaller, like I recall some 5,000 square foot lots. So I appreciate that the developer listened to the council in that regard. But as far as PUDs are concerned, Mitch, this is for us as a city in the future. I'd really like to see, I don't want to hold this developer accountable for that, but I'd like to see us really get something out of a planned unit development in the future, not just unusable slopes as an offset for lowering the zoning in the specific area, but open space that's usable or park space that's usable, not stuff that the developer's not going to build on anyways. And I don't know if our PUD, is that a city ordinance
Yes,
that we have? I would like to look at that again and have that brought to a workshop in the future to see how that reads. And then I also appreciate the fact that the developer said that they are going to be doing some sort of fencing with some sort of coverage so that you're not looking at a broken down fence as you're coming up Crown Road. I know that was a concern of Mr. Harper, that there was going to be lots backed up, but the developer has assured us that they're going to be doing something that's nice and will have some landscaping on it, as well as a sidewalk. And I was also happy to hear that we have expansion for the future. And I also wanted to say that our city administrator has had talks with the county about Crown Road and with the other city administrator of Camas. I've brought it up to the superintendent of the schools. I've written to the city engineer in Camas. It is of concern. I would think that even though it's a joint shared road, that we could get something at least to lower the speed there. I know it's been said that since the school does not have an entrance off of Crown Road, that's why we don't have a 25-mile-per-hour school zone, but we do have the buses entering and exiting off of Crown Road, and people are whipping around that, and a bus could just get broadsided by cars. I would think that we could still come to some sort of agreement on speed or flashing lights for people to slow down, because they don't know there's a school there. There's no sign saying a school, Woodburn School, and lights. And I would think that would be something. I mean, that's not talking about a lot of money, but it's a temporary solution to just get people to slow down around that area. But I'm going to approve this development tonight because of all the efforts of the developer and that it is in good faith with what we're trying to do here with the Berger-Abram study.
Just very briefly, I don't want to go into a lot of detail, but I'm the local representative on the Regional Transportation Council. And I would, as I observed to staff several times, there are a number of federal and state programs where you, in effect, get extra brownie points in competing for the grant if it's a multi-jurisdictional project. And so, frankly, the present plan, if you will, the design for Crown Road is 2 lanes with a center left turn lane, with bike lanes, with sidewalks, and actually a planter strip between the bike lane and the sidewalk. So when that happens, who knows? The funding that's available for those kinds of projects is almost non-existent at the federal and state level. But when it does become available, this project should compete very favorably for whatever funding is available.
Any additional council comments, questions?
Your Honor? One other point I wanted to point out, there was a question about cookie cutter, and it's not cookie cutter. There's provisions within the development agreement for front facade changes and actually rear facade changes and facade diversity, so it won't be just mirror images of everything.
Okay. With that, I've got a motion and a second to pass, post, and publish the ordinance in the usual manner. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Okay, that takes us to Agenda Bill 115-16, a public hearing in regards to the North 20 Development Agreement.
Thank you, Your Honor. The North 20 development, just south of Southeast 23rd Street in the northwest UGA. The property consists of approximately 100 acres total. The current zoning is R110, and the northern portion of it is employment center. The proposed zoning that we have on the for in January would be R115, R110, R175, and R15. Based on those densities, those zoning, you have a density range of 2.9 to 8.7 units per acre, or approximately 547 units allowed. The proposed density for the development is 2.8 units per acre, or 281 units, or maybe 282. Open space, they are providing open space trails, parks through the wetlands areas as well, approximately 28 acres worth. There are specific design and aesthetic standards considered detached, single family. LID stormwater, voluntarily for LID stormwater and stormwater aesthetics. Again, they would vest for the stormwater regulations that we have in place today. Again, open space, parks and trails, critical area retention, fencing along the collector would be uniform, and they're in compliance with the UGA land use study. Their request specifically is a moratorium exemption, so to be able to proceed with land use approvals in spite of the moratorium. They would vest to the current development regulations. They have a road modification for the proposed collector, and they would request transportation impact fee credits for that portion of for that road, the collector road. Again, here's our current standard for a residential collector, 70-foot right-of-way. You have 2 10-foot travel lanes, 2 5-foot bike lanes, 8-foot parking on each side, detached sidewalk, and planter strip. Their proposed modified collector would be in a reduced 62-foot right-of-way. Again, would maintain 10-foot travel lanes and then have the bike lanes, but no parking along the collector itself. And then a detached 10-foot pedestrian path along with that, along the north. And here's a rendering of that proposed collector. And then that's the proposed development itself. I'll bring it back to that. We're done. I did talk about the comments received. There was one comment that was received after the work session, and that was from Mr. Puffer, Lance Puffer, and that will be in the record as well. So the recommended action is to hold a public hearing to take public testimony. If council desires, make a motion to have the city attorney read the ordinance by title only and pass, post, and publish the ordinance in the usual manner.
Thank you. With that, I will open the public hearing and ask that any members of the public that would like to speak to the development agreement, please step forward to the microphone.
Yes, Mr. Mayor and Council. For the record, again, Jamie Housley with the law firm of Jordan Remus, 1499 Southeast Tech Center Place, Suite 380, Vancouver 98683. Attorney for the developer North 20 LLC. My clients are with me this evening, as well as Trevor Hayward, Hayward-Oskowski, the project engineer. And before I begin, I would like to thank your staff, in particular Mitch and Ken, for their hard work this past week in getting this proposed development agreement before council this evening. Staff has been excellent to work with, I must say, and I would like to publicly thank them. North 20 began working with city staff in late spring, well before the property went under contract with my clients, to better understand what Washougal expansion. The property requires a substantial amount of investment in order to ensure the necessary utilities and transportation network to serve the property and surrounding properties. To that end, we worked with staff through the summer and fall, and now that the property is under contract, we want to ensure that we can deliver a high-quality project that remains financially feasible for the developer and meets the objectives of the city's ordinance, in particular 1801. Our two main points on this that we believe are necessary to make this project a reality is that we are stressing quality in this project over quantity with the design of the master plan as presented. We do, however, need a certain quantity to balance the feasibility of the site amenities that we're offering and also the constraints that are on the property to ensure that this project is still unique and attractive enough to future homebuyers. As to this quality versus quantity question, we're seeking to develop it as a master plan community. And through this development agreement, we're trying to ensure that there's a quality of design that goes throughout the whole community, rather than trying to focus on maximizing the number of lots that we can do under the zoning of the urban growth area. The development features 6 distinct residential neighborhoods with approximately 28 acres of green space and parks and over 2 miles of trails. The design of each neighborhood and orientation of lots tries to maximize the views while also maintaining public access to the trail system as well as the view shed at the top of the hill. The design also tries to accentuate the natural features of the site and allow the built environment to work with the slopes, the wetland, and the seasonal stream that traverses the part of the property there in the middle of the site. And the project utilizes the slopes, the road network, and other features to maintain the distinct neighborhood within the entire master plan. The proposed master plan through this design yields about 40 fewer lots than would be allowed under the Berger ABAM UGA preferred alternative. And we meet or under the density targets of the preferred alternative, which invites the applicants to proceed forward and meet the vision as set forth by City Council. Now as to achieving that balance between quantity. Because the property lies in an undeveloped portion of the city, and because there will be a substantial need for infrastructure in order to serve the property and the whole North UGA, we've worked to achieve this balance through this plan. And as council knows, I do work across a number of jurisdictions within Oregon and Washington. And because of the Growth Management Act in Washington and Senate Bill 100 in Oregon, land has become a commodity in a sense. And a commodity that can be very expensive for purchasing for development. So when you add in the cost of the land along with the infrastructure necessary to serve the sites, it becomes much more efficient when you have smaller and smaller lots. Again, what we've tried to achieve with this project is not doing that, not maximizing the utility of the land, but rather trying to spread out where we can the density to where council's identified it's appropriate along 23rd, and then it moves up the hill, moving towards the larger lots, which are around 15 to 20,000 square feet in size. Holistically, this project attempts to provide a diverse product and lot types, and it only has really the ability to do so because we're developing roughly 70 acres out of the entire 100-acre site. As Mitch pointed out in the development agreement, we've also specified some other features that I think would be approved by council. No multifamily product will be placed in here. The site will try to incorporate low-impact development where feasible. Again, we're providing more than 28 acres of open space, parks and trails, and a scenic overlook. We've already worked with City Council through the workshops to provide a schematic for the development of a modified collector with a grade-separated multimodal trail, which and no parking along that collector. We think that will be an attractive thing as development continues on the north end of the city. And as Mitch had indicated with the Marlin development, we're also guaranteeing facade diversity, so that we're not getting that cookie cutter fill that may be occurring at the hills at Round Lake. This ensures that units that are adjacent to each other have that distinct fill as you move through the development. So with that, I'd like to take the opportunity to respond to any questions that council may have at this time, but I do want to be respectful of everybody's time here. I know that people sat through a long hearing. So with that, otherwise, with your permission, I'll take my leave and would request the ability to come back and respond to any public comments that may come up.
You bet. Thanks, Jamie.
Thank you.
Other folks that would like to speak to the development agreement? Don't be shy.
Larry Lane River, 29513 Southeast 33rd. There was some discussion, Mitch, in the prior meeting regarding the trails that are going to be going off this, into the south line of this by the park. Right where you see this bottom circle here is actually where there's a park there. And there were some trails that were going to come off and go through our wooded property, which is a bit remote at the time, and so we were concerned about that, and we spoke about that a couple of weeks ago. So I understand those are not on there now, but could come back. Could you give me?
They're not proposed as part of this development. They were within the UGA land use study and within that preferred alternative. But this development is not proposing those trails, and so it's not anything that we're looking at to require at this point. However, I did talk about the need for update to our Parks Capital Facility Plan, and at that time then those trails would be addressed. And then there was a philosophical discussion about which way that would go and how that would go, but that's where that discussion would take place.
Would we be involved in that, or would that just happen?
No, it's a public process, public hearing, adoption of Parks Capital Facility Plan.
Yeah, because just to kind of reiterate on it, it's something where you have the trails, and the trails go through private land and through people's yards and everything else, and the security is just a huge, huge issue for us, because we sit alone in the middle of 5 acres, planned to be that way for a while until we're finally engulfed. But because of our property here, our 5 acres, and the kids having 5 acres, they were gonna build a house, all of a sudden there's a trail gonna be coming through that property, to where they're planning to build, and right through our backyard and through the young lady that lives behind me, through her front yard, what we would call it. So we were quite concerned. If it's not an issue now, then I won't take it for time, but if it's something that's going to be coming up down the road here, we definitely want to be involved.
Yeah, I would certainly caution, and not just yourself, Larry, but anybody else in the room as well. We do have, on our city website, we do have the ability to sign up for electronic newsletters and that type of stuff. And if you're part of that, you'll automatically get our council packets and workshop packets and agendas and that type of thing as well. So if nothing else, you can quickly peruse that and see if anything's on there that have to do with trails, parks, proposals, comprehensive plans as we update those. But also, Mitch, if we were in this case, with the trail not being part of this, that notwithstanding, if we were then talking about siting one through there, we would still go ahead and send mailings out to folks that all live within that 500 feet, whatever we put on it for that as well, would we not?
It depends on how we would, if we're looking holistically at in an entire citywide Parks Capital Facility Plan, probably not. But if we were very, localized specific, yes, we would.
Yeah.
Okay. I know that we do have an option too, in Sunlaw. Chris is gonna maybe, he'll talk to you guys about it, give you a copy of it and so on. So if there's an alternate plan that we can offer or something like that, that works for everybody,
I think the intent is that we come up with the best plan.
make it so. And I appreciate your time, and I know you work very hard with these developments, things that is very difficult. But you do, I don't know, I think maybe we're gonna need a helicopter to go up that hill, because there's just, I don't know how you're gonna do it with all the homes you're building up there. The density, I'm afraid, sorry to see that what we have now is going away. Such a beautiful place.
Thank you, Larry.
Quick question. Is his property in the city at this point? It is. Thank you.
Hi, I'm the son-in-law you mentioned. I like to strike while the iron's hot, so I'm just gonna pass this out to you guys real quick to give you a little visual of what he was talking about.
Thank you.
Would you give that to your father-in-law
Thank you, sir.
with my thanks?
I won't take much of your time, but we actually own the 5 acres that's in the white square down by the legend in the north area there. What's being proposed largely is what you see in front of you, and we've made a proposal just to kind of move that. That area there is heavily wooded. As I mentioned 2 weeks ago when I had the opportunity to stand in front of you all, safety is a large concern in that area. There's very few wooded areas that are left up there. The 5 acres that we own is adjacent to the 6 acres that my father and mother-in-law own. We're not developing that property. We're building a single home on a wooded 5-acre property that we plan on raising our children on. We're looking at next year to start doing that. So as you see in front of you, the proposal we have about the trails, I know, as you mentioned, there'll be more talks about it, but again, I was always taught to strike while the iron's hot, and that trail system not only connects us North 20, but it goes down to Granite Highlands, and the city council has previously stated at workshops that it's important to connect these new developments together with trail systems. So again, I wanted to provide an alternative that you can just have in the back of your mind. I think that the density issue, as Larry mentioned, is also of importance there with Crown Road. I think that's been discussed quite a bit already. We're appreciative of the developer that, they've left a lot of open space up there, but Crown Road and the infrastructure surrounding it is gonna be very, very impactful along Washington. Hopefully that's a consideration, excuse me, going forward as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
Chris, can you send me a copy when you get a chance?
I've got one here in the packet as well.
My name is Quinn Steelman. My address is 28515 Southeast 23rd Street. I own the small little half-acre lot. We moved here in 2014 in May. My wife and I have a 4-year-old daughter, a soon-to-be 3-year-old son, and a 7-month-old. Planning to have more. The first time that we came up to this lot, we noticed that the trees out by Woodburn Elementary, and then we noticed the open land and the cows down the street, and we feel very blessed to be able to be here. And the one thing that we noticed was the nature. Being a believer of a great creator and what he's given us, I want you guys to look at, around you at all the blankets, especially the one with the mother and the daughter in the back. We have been put on this earth to raise children and to teach them about right and wrong. I believe we are fighting Mother Nature right now. I believe that everything that we are doing right now, by bringing this many houses and this many people in an area that is as small, 100 acres doesn't seem, small, but once you put all those houses in there, the safety, just like the gentleman before, he wants to raise a family. There are people flying down that road, and for having my wife pull out in her van with my 3 small children and to get T-boned, I don't know what I would do. I don't know how I would react. But to only increase that traffic by adding these homes is not right, okay? I want you guys to think about that. I want to think, I don't know how many, if you guys have children, if you guys are raising children here, but when we came here, we looked out to the left and saw an elementary school that we could take our children to, okay? We were close to that elementary school. My wife could drive them down there, could walk them down there, right? And I could feel safe. Right now, I don't feel safe with all these homes coming, okay? Last year when my son, every morning, I wake out and I used to see deer, okay? I used to see deer. And my son, on Saturdays, if I would see deer, I would wake him up and I'd take him outside and I would teach him about the deer, okay? I would teach him about the animals, about the coyotes that you hear, okay? You're not gonna hear those people. You're not gonna hear the coyotes anymore. You're not gonna see the deer. I don't see deer anymore since they've started to clear cut, okay? You're taking away the beauty, and you will take away the beauty once you put all these homes and all these so-called parks. You will take that away, okay? Everybody up here tonight on the 3 bills have talked about 3 things: safety, family, and nature, okay? You are fighting against Mother Nature. You are taking away what she has given you, and she cannot give it back. The water that you are drinking will be tainted if we have all this water coming in. I have a well. That well will be taken away from me if you guys decide to pass this bill. I will not be able to take the earth, what Mother Nature has given to me, and drink it pure. It will be filled with chemicals. It will be filled with everything that I do not know. But I know that the water that people drink in the United States and everywhere around here is not good water. The water that Mother Nature gives to you comes from the earth. That will be taken away from my family. Okay, and then I will be forced to pay water that is not good. I don't agree with that. Okay, I want you to search deep in your heart, and I want you to look at your children if you have children in the future. I have children. I don't want to walk out east and look at the back of homes. I agree in larger lots. The first thing I did when I came here was put a 30 by 30 garden in the corner of my yard so I could grow food for my children. I can't put that water that I will have to do on my garden and feed my children with that. Right now, I feed my plants and I feed my vegetables and my fruits with water from my well. I cannot tell myself to water my garden with the water that will be coming from the city. I can't. I want you to look in your hearts and say it.
Quinn, I need you to wrap up if you could.
Okay, thank you. I thank you for all you guys do, but I really want you guys to think about that. Think about the future, okay? We don't take it from people, we give it to our children.
Thank you.
My name's Kennedy, 2413 Southeast 283rd. I happen to live at the parcel just off to the left of that, I guess you could say. But, yeah, right there, thanks, man. I actually have a house kind of pretty much right out that corner. And, my wife and I, and I've got a family, and we basically decided, hey, we're gonna live out in some acreage. And so I'm opposed to the smaller lot sizes. I know in the TAC, we had talked about maybe, they were talking higher density, 5,000, but 3,000 to 5,000 square foot lots, I think is just way, way too small for that area. I would like to see the 10,000 or the half acre lots completely through the whole development. I understand you have a density requirement. Let's do the density requirement in downtown or somewhere where there's people that can, if you've got a 3,000 square foot lot, how do you park a car? Where do you park the car? Do you have a 2-car garage in a 3,000 square foot lot? It seems to me like there wouldn't be. So those people would have to walk. I don't know how they're gonna walk to stores, convenience stores, even to school. They're gonna have to have a vehicle if they live in that community. This is not an area for small lots. Number two, I was really kind of concerned today to find out that nobody has contacted at all. In fact, there hasn't been any discussion yet about the Northwest Gas Pipeline. The reason that's significant and important is because it feeds the whole Northwest. This is a major trunk line. Why would they be concerned about density? I understand we would go to them and talk to them about design criteria, but their concern primarily, I think, is gonna be density. Reason being is that all gas pipelines have a maximum allowable operating pressure. That maximum allowable operating pressure is based upon how many people live within 1,000 feet of a gas pipeline. So, to say that we could build out another 300 homes within that vicinity is going to affect their maximum allowable operating pressure. So, they may be required to bring in a third gas pipeline. So that means constructing another gas pipeline back down to, all the way down through Granite Highlands, all the way back down. So I believe they should really be included in discussions and development. I see just trees, but it doesn't say gas pipeline on there. The gas pipeline's kind of hidden through the community of Granite Highlands. I believe that's a very serious potential, danger if the gas pipeline erupts. Somebody doesn't know it's there. If we have a landslide, the gas pipeline erupts. The reason they're 1,000 feet is because that's the blast zone. They figure anybody within 1,000 feet would be gone. So that's why that's why they limit them on the operating pressure. Also, schools, we all have families that go to the Camas School District. I don't believe for 1 second that the Camas School District is gonna absorb all of these homes. And so the Camas School District says we will take them. However, Woodburn Elementary is completely packed. If
this point. So where are they gonna put all the kids? The first place they're gonna drop off kids are the ones that live in Washougal. So I see the writing on the walls. That basically means that our area is not gonna allow, or it's not gonna have our kids still go to the Camas School District where they've been going. And, so I have a big concern about that.
Ken, they have to go to Camas schools. We don't draw the school district boundaries, the school districts do.
Yeah, but after a while, they probably say, well, look, you know, we can't afford to have this many students, somebody has to drop out, right?
No.
Wouldn't it be this, wouldn't it be
No,
this
they
area?
don't. No. This is inside the Camas School District boundary.
And it's solid, they're not gonna move the boundary,
No.
they wouldn't move the boundary.
I wouldn't say never, but I've never heard of it being done.
Washougal would have to agree to take it. That would be very unique.
I don't
see it happen.
Quite frankly, I don't know why Camas would ever give up the amount of revenue they get from the number of kids coming out of there. They would have to bank on it.
Now, that's a lot of homes, though, I presume they probably didn't think there'd be that
Okay.
amount of development in that area.
Well, Camas right now is about to develop approved 2,300 home sites to the north of this. So I'm pretty sure it's in their plans.
I hope you're right. It's just, there's,
And- and-
boundaries kind
and-
of get redirected all the time, so.
And again, Camas schools are on all of our mailings for these projects. Northwest Natural Gas is on our mailings for all of these. All of those folks know that these are happening.
They didn't know this was happening, I know.
Trust me,
For a fact that they did not know that this development was occurring. In fact, they wanted to be at this meeting today. They didn't get that opportunity.
Sure they do.
Sure they do.
Ken, they're on multiple mailings that we send them for this packet alone. Multiples.
I can give you the person
I-
in Battleground that deals with the local area for the Northwest Gas Pipeline. They were not instructed that this development was occurring.
They were. I won't argue it with you. I'm not saying that necessarily the person that should probably be on there, we've been notified to change names or any of that. But believe me when I say Northwest Natural is on here. The city of, or Camas School District is on our mailings. Those are just normal. What somebody does with that, I couldn't tell you.
All right, well, I just know that the people I spoke to said they weren't notified.
Northwest Natural has thousands of employees, so I'm sure that there's a lot of them that don't
It
know.
wasn't Northwest, it's actually the owner's Williams Gas Pipeline.
They're on there as well.
Williams Gas Pipeline's on there. Okay.
They go right through here. Yeah,
Well, thank you for your time.
you bet. Good evening.
Hi.
You've been so patient.
That's okay. My name is Bill Mouse. I'm at 491 West Dogwood. Been here about 7 years. I've never been to a council meeting before, so I hope these are appropriate questions. I can't find my house on that map. Can you tell me where, Bruce, where do you live? Dogwood and the Sixth Street pops up into my house. Can you tell me where that is? Because I can't figure it out from the map.
They can come close. It's definitely not on that, because there are no,
Lookout Ridge, like, I can't go southwest of this project. So this property is.
To your north.
Of our house,
to your north.
north and,
You'll be right below it. That Lookout Ridge, you see that?
Yeah, where's that
That's Dogwood Street, I believe.
Okay.
Those houses are on Dogwood.
okay, and my question is, where's the traffic flow? Is it gonna come through our neighborhood, or does it go out to the infamous Crown, or?
Uh,
Down?
Part of it goes out to Crown, part of it goes up to 23rd.
This is Second to the south, right here.
That's second?
Yep,
And that's going to come down and tie into Dogwood right there.
correct.
Is that the house to your left?
No, that's not by
Yeah, by the, you know where
Okay.
the house, the foundation is?
Yes.
It's just east of that, around that corner.
Okay. I've been staring at the map, trying to figure out where do I live?
We need a bigger map.
Well, it's just, okay, so that's where the bear was 2 years ago, is where the yellow was. I saw a bear romping through. In your all's decisions, I mean, we always knew the hill would be developed. I mean, that's not a surprise. I'm shocked that it's 291 homes. I always thought there'd be bigger lots and bigger homes and stuff. Is part of your thinking process that if they do high density, it devalues my house? is that part of your consideration? Because you look, you go partway down the hill to where the apartments are, that's a terrible place, the road's terrible, I'm glad I don't live anywhere near there. If you get really high density housing at the top of the hill, it's gonna, the traffic and the value of the homes are gonna drop, I think. And the question, is that, is that part of your consideration?
No.
Okay. So if we wanna keep the value of our houses where they're at, then we have to fight this?
Shouldn't have to. I mean, this,
Fight's not the right word, I don't wanna fight.
No.
I love Washington.
this gets into community development planning,
Yeah, even under
410.
Even under a land use entitlement, a subdivision, property values are not necessarily a consideration that is done under city code. And so, there's not a mitigation for it or, but, we generally in plans, we try to think of property values. Obviously, we want, property values, and then I think density is relationship to that. And we have, a variety of different lot sizes, but that gets to, there's a variety of different people that want to buy a home. And so we provide all that variety. But
Okay, so.
there's not a specific code criteria for property value.
Okay, so if they wanted to put nothing but apartments up there,
They can't because it's not allowed.
that's the, I don't know all the initials, the R dash, whatever you're using.
Yeah, this is entirely and completely single-family detached within this development.
Thanks.
You bet. You ask a great question, though. That's a great question.
Mr. Mayor, could I ask Mitch a question? A lot of the comments here have been directed towards density. People, they would like lower density. And I think the council has made it clear we'd like lower density, particularly in that area, and higher density down here in the downtown area. Do we have to have this higher density, at least in the northwest quadrant of this project?
Well, I mean, this is a development agreement between you and the developer. This is what they propose, and this is consistent with the plan that you adopted in the Northwest UGA land use study. And so, those things from where I sit, I would say that, yeah, I mean, these are what, we have put forward. This is the plan that we've done and looked at, and they are, in compliance with said plan. But that being said, this is a development agreement between you and the developer. And that's, it's pretty much anything goes for that.
If we decided not to approve this plan, we would continue to engage in studies. The moratorium would remain in effect. When's the moratorium go out of effect?
End of January.
End of January. And what would happen then?
Well, for this particular development, one of the biggest things that they're dealing with is stormwater, which you're scheduled to have a hearing later this evening on stormwater and adopt those regulations. If they don't get that vesting, then they're going to be subject to the new stormwater regulations, which changes the design probably. And I'm not the engineer, so I don't know what that would do, but from what I've been told, it's significant. So this is the last hearing before that time.
I would just offer just one sort of land use policy comment here. Mitch alluded to this in the conversation about the Granite 3 project. Let's just imagine for a moment that we rezoned this to R120 in its entirety and required 20,000 square foot lots and didn't provide any sort of ability to deviate from that at all. They come in for a subdivision, they may or may not deliver the type of product that you see here. You might get 20,000 square foot lots, but I don't know if you would get the overall package that you see here, and so it's a trade-off. You've buffered lot sizes in the immediate southern portion in order to address concerns about, I forget the terminology for that, where you phase density over. Beveling, right. We bevel in all kinds of professions, including land use. But you get a significant, so there's how many acres of open space are shown here?
28.
28, so 28% of this site is being dedicated to pretty active open space. It's usable, it's walkable, there's viewpoint. So it's a trade-off, and it's exclusively the council's consideration. But I think that's what's in front of you, is a lot of open space, but according to the package here, it requires more density in that northern portion in order to achieve that beveling. The alternative probably would look a little bit different. We might not get as much open space, or you might not have a viable project, but I don't, it's hard to say. That's, I think, the trade-off.
And this has been workshopped twice for the council?
Three times.
Three times. And it was,
Could we continue the public hearing and have the discussion afterwards?
One of, another point to make, and I've heard it a couple times as well, in regards to discussions on, density. Density isn't really what we're mandated to plan to. What we're mandated to plan to is a population estimate. And all of our different zoning and densities help us achieve that, but it isn't necessarily, the state doesn't look at us to say, you need to have so much land that's, in lots this size or that type of thing. What we need to be able to do is to develop an overall plan citywide that takes into account the population estimation that we've been given from the state. So it's a little bit different than a mandate being on us for the actual zoning of property itself, the way that somebody might propose it to us. So any other members of the public that would like to speak to the issue? Yes. Good evening.
Good evening. I'm Robert Innes. I live at 428 West Dogwood, which is on the south side of that south downhill side of the development area. I've read the SEPA environmental checklist, and my comments are reactions to things I saw in there. First concerns water runoff, stormwater. It says in the SEPA checklist, water to be infiltrated where reasonably practicable. Well, that's a very wet hillside. But the hayfields that cover most of it now must absorb a huge amount of water. We know on the downhill side that there's lots of underground streams, there's springs that shift their location every time there's construction. And so once they start digging in that area, there's going to be a lot of runoff. And as they build, they're going to build up to where 35% of the area will be impermeable. So there's going to be a lot more runoff in the future after construction than there would be before. So there is going to be a significant drainage issues, but I'm sure will be addressed in future engineering work. But I want to emphasize that undoubtedly there's going to have to be some kind of drainage, storage ponds or something on this southern edge. Particularly because on one side you do have the gas pipeline, and you probably don't want all that water soaking into the gas easement at the lower end and washing away soil, covering the pipeline and so forth. So that's a factor. Another issue is trees. Now, for the most part, this is open area, but on the southern edge, especially where West Second crossed the boundary of the southern edge, there are a string of trees right on the edge, and they're quite large enough that if some of them were damaged in construction process, they could fall over and hit houses on the south side. So that is an issue that needs to be dealt with. That was not really mentioned in the checklist. A third item is noise. And this comment, I apologize in advance to the person on 23rd Street, but one way to mitigate the noise for the residents on the south side is for the construction to start from the north side off of 23rd, and all construction construction traffic off 23rd. That's a possible mitigation measure. One other item, let's see, BPA easement. In the SEPA environmental checklist, there's no mention of the BPA easement. Now, just glancing at that, I would say that much of the parkland is BPA easement. But, so I think there needs to be a more specific explanation of how much of that 28 acres of parkland is BPA easement and so forth, so that we really understand the relationship between the BPA easement and the land that's set aside for parks. One last thing, parking. There was mention of, I think, 2 spaces per house. That may be adequate in some of the areas, but in the southern developments where the lots are bigger, just judging from our experience in Lookout Ridge, where we have 3-car garages, and still we have cars spilling out on the streets in many places. I'm not sure how realistic 2 cars a house is. I think the real average for existing residents is a little higher.
I'm not sure where the 2 cars came from, because you certainly have the garages, you've got the aprons, and if it's a 2-car garage, it's 2 cars. If it's a 3-car garage, it's got 3. One of the other things that I believe,
Parking on both sides.
correct me, Jamie, if I'm wrong, but one of the things that your folks had pointed out in one of the first meetings was the way that they've located the lots themselves. They've got wider and narrow lots that are interspersed with each other, so that those driveways are farther away from each other, and you've got more on-street parking than you would if they were designed in a different fashion, so.
The requirement for 2 parking spaces is from our zoning code. All residential lots must have 2 parking spaces.
Minimum.
Minimum, right. And all the streets within this development, with the exception of the collector, will have parking on both sides.
Both sides. Anyone else that would like to speak to the agreement? Yes. Good evening.
My name is Terry Travis, I live at 3009 Southeast 300th Avenue. A couple of points, I just want to reiterate everything that's been said, because I feel the same about the density. And to me, it sounds like the density, compacting those small lots to 300 square feet is just really tiny. And it sounds like it's to benefit the developer, to me, rather than the aesthetic of the area and the traffic flow and the whole community. It just seems to, it doesn't benefit the community as much as it does the developer, making sure, I'm sorry, you can just money. I'm concerned about the impact on the schools, the Campbell schools, and the kids that graduated from there, and I know the high school's already full and has the extra buildings, and I just don't know where that's going. I know they're considering more, but there's money to be come up with on that. I don't know how you pay for all that. And just kind of the imbalance of the small effects of density, I guess, of small lots versus the value of the community with trying to impact a high flow traffic area in an area that's just beautiful and has space, and we are fortunate to live on a larger acre of land, but do they all need to be that? I appreciate, Mr. Scott, your comment about if they made them all the same, you might not have the quality of home that we want, but I just want the whole picture looked at as to how it would look out to some larger lots and some really tiny ones.
Thank you. Anyone else?
I'll be brief. A couple of weeks ago, I read a letter about the trails. I wanted to email it to the council people and council members, if that's okay with you. I do have your email addresses, so you'll have that. It kind of explains the security issues going that we have. Number 2, how familiar are you with this area up here? When you go to the top of Crown Road, break out by the school, and you're coming out to where 23rd Street is. If you're, I'm sure you must be, but when you look to your left, which would be to the west, you see the housing development that's gone up there. You see how they've just literally mowed those trees down. And it's really too bad, but they have. And every day we drive out there, we know, we see it. Every day there's more houses, density. I think, like I say, you're working very hard to protect our interests. When you look at this, it almost, especially towards the north by 23rd, it looks like the same thing where you just have houses stacked in there. So I know that a lot of people own property up in that area, hopefully we'll hold on to it, try to preserve it. But if you can, we would like to see larger lots and less people, that nicer homes are gonna be worth more. So, thank you.
Thank you, Larry. Anyone else? Last call.
I'll do a quick one too. I'm John Travis, 3009 Southeast 300th Avenue. You heard a lot of talk about infrastructure and how important that is, the water runoff and everything else, but I'm not hearing the transportation issue of this. Okay, you've heard from everyone how hazardous Crown Road is. Now you're gonna add 400 homes, and they're all gonna be using Crown Road into town. The metro area is to the west. It's gonna be the natural arterial. 2,000 students at the high school, a lot of them use that road as well. I think it would be irresponsible of the city to approve this without first making improvements to Crown Road for the safety. Thank you.
Thank you. Very quickly. Very quickly.
Now that I figured out where I live. And another traffic thing, if you come down Second Street and you go right past my house, and you're gonna go down on Sixth Street and Y, that's impossible. That road is a death trap. I almost got hit the other day, that you allow parking on the inside of the curve, and I'm inching around, and a car comes whipping down the outside and no one's hitting me. Now, if the 291 homes are allowed to exit down Sixth Street and Y Street, it's just gonna be one accident after another, after another, after another.
Yeah,
So hopefully in the traffic, you'll either fix Crown and route them there, but they can't come down Lookout Ridge, there's just no way.
They can, some will.
Well, yeah, but I'm saying the roads can't handle it. My son was 4 years in Camas, I don't know how many times he almost got hit on Y Street. And we have a pickup, you can see it.
Yep, that's why we've changed to those road standards now.
Thank you.
You bet. Last call. Okay, I'll close the public hearing. Council?
Mr. Mayor, I ask unanimous consent that the city attorney read the ordinance by title only.
Hearing no objection, so ordered.
An ordinance authorizing the approval of development agreement between the City of Washougal and Rays Acres LLC and North 20 LLC, providing for the vesting of regulations and the ability to proceed with land use entitlements, including but not limited to a subdivision, in compliance with the moratorium provisions of ordinance number 1801, applicable to the Northwest UGA annexation area.
Mr. Mayor, I move we pass, post, and publish the ordinance in the usual manner.
I've got a motion and a second to pass, post, and publish the ordinance in the usual manner. Council discussion. Michelle?
The BPA quarter is not included in the open space 28 acres. Is that not what we were told before?
It's included in the.
It's in there.
It
Yeah.
is?
In the,
Yep.
yes.
Okay.
Yeah, that's land that is owned by the property owner.
Okay. All right, well, my comments on this, again, I just wanted to thank the developer. They did really work with us and improve their original design. They have a buffer around the entire project that was not there before. They lowered the number of houses by, I don't know, was it 30, 40 homes? They added trails, they added a park, a lookout that wasn't there before. They widened the street, the connector road there, to what the current city standards are. My only problem with this, and I wish I could have told you this all in the workshop meetings, because I was looking at this, and I finally, you don't have individual lot size posted on this, but you do have on the right side that small table where there's 131 houses that are 3,000 to 5,000 square feet. And I just have a problem with 3,000 square foot lots. I don't like the Woodburn area that's been developed behind the school there, but I guarantee you those houses are on bigger lots than 3,000 square foot probably 5 to 7,000 square foot lots. I would be okay, and if we had minimum 5,000 square foot lots, and I know I'm kind of being rogue here on the density thing, but my whole issue is less cars, less homes means less cars. I just don't feel like we have the infrastructure to support all of the cars that we're talking about coming up Crown Road and on these country roads. I mean, we're looking at gridlock, by the time all these things get developed. So, and I feel it would be, I do respect the effort and the expertise that we've paid $250,000 to have Berger Abram do this study with us and engage the community on. And I don't feel that it would be true to it if we had 3,000 square foot when we had lots, when we have this R15 zoning designated on the feathering, the beveling that Berger's done. And so I wish, like I said, I apologize to the developer for not getting it out there. I did email Mitch, but I would feel a lot more comfortable if these lots were a minimum of 5,000 square foot. And so that will impact my decision tonight.
How about an average of 5,000 square feet? Because that's typically what they do in an area. They say, here, 3,000 to 5,000 square feet, that's, what, an average of 4,000 square feet?
I think that's why it's peach right now, because I think it does average out to higher than 5 because of the surrounding homes in that area. And I do also want to mention that the developer reworked their roads there. And so they're really making an effort here. It's just my feelings about traffic and cars and number of people.
A couple of things. This keeps coming up, so I wanted to explain to people what it meant. Is LID, is low impact development. The Department of Ecology of the state of Washington is imposing a whole new set of rules effective the first day of January that require low impact development. And I don't want to go into a lot of detail, but to describe them as onerous doesn't actually capture what's going on. The Berger Abram study has been mentioned a number of times. This is Berger Abram is a consulting and engineering firm that has been contracted by the city. We have had 6 technical advisory committee meetings. Most of the people on that committee are landowners either in this northwest or the northeast urban growth area. There are a few other, there's staff and some other expertise as well, but a lot of this has been hashed out. This started out, frankly, that much of this area, of this development, when the county put it in our urban growth boundary, they took a brush and painted a color on it that said employment center. At some point, we asked them, what does employment center mean? And they said, we don't know, we don't have employment center zoning. And we said, but we don't either. Once we started looking into what that might mean, you think Crown Road is scary. Imagine turning that whole area up there into jobs. It can't be done. You can't get the transportation up Crown Road to make that happen. So this whole study has, in fact, convinced us that this is residential, not employment land up there. And that was a huge change because we have to make compensating changes in the land use plan for the rest of the city. There also have been, in parallel with that, 3 meetings of the downtown focus group, also led by Berger Abram, and I also sit on that committee. And we have moved a significant portion of the employment quota down to the downtown area. And we've also actually moved a significant amount of housing down to the downtown area, where it will be much more multifamily. Actually, what we're trying to encourage down there is what's called mixed use, where you have retail or offices on the ground floor and maybe the second floor, but then you have apartments or condominiums on the third floor and above, whatever that means. So all of these changes have now been underway. This rethinking has been underway for the past year. And council has weighed in pretty clearly that we wanted relatively large lot sizes in this northeast urban growth area. And a lot of this under this Berger-ABAM plan that is being talked about would be zoned 15,000 square foot lots, which are the largest lots in the present zoning code of the city. Another big piece of it would be 10,000 square foot lots, and then it bevels on down to 7,500 square foot and then 5,000 square foot lots. The general principle has been that the low density, large lots would be high and steep, whereas the high density or small lots would be low and flat in terms of the landform. And relatively speaking, that's exactly what's been done on this project in terms of the way it's laid out now, is that the high density or the small lot sizes, that's all relatively flat and low, whereas the yellow and the dark yellow, that's all relatively high on the site and steep, and that's where the views are important, and that's where the large lots would be. I just wanted to make one other comment. The collector, which is that thing that runs all the way across the project, has a little bend in it. The reason that that has no parking on it is that there are no driveways onto it, only streets. So there's no houses that front onto that collector. They all front onto those side streets. And for that reason, we felt that we probably do not need parking along that collector. And that because of the slopes there, if you think about what it takes, if you've got a steep slope and you need to build an 80-foot wide road or passage area, you have to move a lot of dirt. And not only that, you end up creating a huge bank below your street. So by letting the sidewalk be well above the street level, and only one sidewalk, but a wide one, on one side, we do away with the need to move huge quantities of dirt and make huge berms down below. So that's the thinking as to why this particular collector design makes sense. But I want to reiterate that all of the local streets have parking on both sides, and furthermore, that the developer has come up with a way of thinking about how you put driveways into those local streets that go a long ways toward maximizing the amount of on-street parking. If you have a driveway every 20 feet, you can, or even 30 feet, you can only park one car in between those two driveways. If you have two driveways close to each other and then you have 40 feet, there's enough room to park two cars. So that kind of thinking has gone into this also. As Mitch has said, this is not the first time this has come before us. There's been a lot of discussion, a lot of development, and a lot of conversation about how to make it better. Thank you.
Joyce?
This property came to our attention because the residents up there wanted to be annexed into the city of Washougal. So it was, from that angle, then it was the employment center. So we have taken this for the last year over many, many discussions and working with the developers, trying to come up with something that worked for this land. And I think it's just been a long process, and this certainly is better than what we started with. And it's part of our city now. It came in to be annexed, and now it's part of our city, and so we're trying to make it a good part of our city.
David?
I understand the concern about larger lots. I share it. When I came here in 2005, I'd love to have been able to afford a large lot. But at that time, land and housing prices were at their peak. As soon as we bought, they went down. But, so I understand the desire for larger lots. I also understand that that's, if you have all larger lots, you have the situation that I had in Sacramento where I lived before I came here. I lived next door to firefighters who worked in San Francisco. They would go down there 4 days a week and come home 3 days a week because they couldn't afford the commute. It was 125 miles. And I don't want to see that. I'd like to see the people that work here have a chance to live here. A lot of our employment opportunities here are in retail trade. They can't afford the big lots. I'd like to see them have something that would allow them to live in Washougal so they don't have to commute and clog up the roads. Because I use those roads, and you use those roads, because there's not a lot of shopping, major shopping areas in Washougal. Everywhere you need to go for employment, shopping, whatever, is usually outside of Washougal, which is why I object to bike lanes all over the place, because Washougal people need cars, not bikes. I have a bike, I ride a bike, and I think it's a great thing. It's great exercise. But it's not what I depend on to get where I need to go for employment, for shopping, and all the rest of it. So I would like to see a mix of housing. I'd rather have more of this these small lots down on the lowlands, close to the core of the city. But the land down there is limited, so some of it has to go up on the hill. I'm going to vote for this. I also am going to point out to everybody that although it will be vested here in the general plan and the density, the studies on traffic and a variety of other issues that were mentioned tonight have yet to be done. They'll be done in the next year or so. And I will represent your interest in those because I feel very strongly, as you do, and I feel very similarly to the way that you do. So if this passes tonight, I don't want you to lose heart or go away mad. I do want you to go away because it's getting late. But this is not the end of the fight. The details have yet to be worked out, and you can be a part of that. Thanks very much, Mr. Mayor.
You bet. Brent?
I think that we probably could have pushed for a little bit lower density on that area, but this process has gone on for a long time. I think at this point, the property owner is entitled to develop his property. There's no right to continue to have it basically be green space. That's just not fair, not right, not legal. So I will support this.
Any other council comments or questions? Okay, I've got a motion and a second to pass, post, and publish the ordinance in the usual manner. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Motion carries. Thank you. Council, let's take a quick 5 minutes if we can.
Oh, fabulous, thank you.
But just a very short